We're very lucky to have with us live in the studios this morning, Mikey Weinstein. Mikey Weinstein is the founder and president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. He is a 1997 honor graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. He served for 10 years on active duty in the United States Air Force as a judge advocate and also served as the Air Force's first chief of telecommunications and information systems procurement law. He spent over 3 years in the West Wing during the Reagan administration as legal counsel in the White House. In his final position there, he was named the Committee Management Officer of the Iran-Contra investigation in his capacity as Assistant General Counsel of the White House Office of Administration, Executive Office of the President of the United States. And he is here to talk about his organization and his book, which he co-authored with Davin Say, With God on Our Side: One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. If you would begin, tell us a bit about the Military Religious Freedom Foundation.
Well, first of all, anyone who's listening, there's a lot of information, but the easiest thing is to go to our very smoking website, militaryreligiousfreedom.org. Again, www.militaryreligiousfreedom.org. We're a 501c3 nonprofit charity, and the mission of our foundation is, we're very vociferous in protecting the religious rights of our honorable and noble sailors, Marines, soldiers, and airmen, and specifically ensuring that we try our very best to rebuild the now obliterated wall separating metaphysical and physical, spiritual and temporal, church and state in the technologically most lethal organization ever created by Homo sapiens sapiens, which is, our U.S. military. I'm sad to report to your folks today on the air that wall separating church and state in the Marine Corps, Navy, Army, and Air Force is nothing but smoke and debris. So we have two missions. We litigate. We've given up trying to convince anybody to do something in a different way. And we educate. We educate the media. We try to educate the members of the military as that they all took a sacred blood oath, Mike, to preserve and protect, support, and defend the Constitution. They did not take such an oath to preserve and protect, support, and defend the Book of Mormon, the Quran, the Torah, the Old or the New Testament, or what have you. But basically today we've got we have 737 U.S. military installations that the Pentagon acknowledges. It's actually closer to 1,000 scattered around the world. And in the studios we have a nice map of the world, but in 132 countries. These are U.S. military installations, and on every one of them now we have essentially an organization of the Christian Taliban and the Christian Al-Qaeda. It's called the Officers Christian Fellowship for the officers. And for the enlisted folks, Mike, it's called the Christian Military Fellowship. And they have a tripartite or three-level goal, which goal they view as much more critically important than the oath they all took out, as we just talked about a second ago, to protect and preserve the Constitution. I can't make this stuff up. They're unabashed about it. It's right on their websites. And they use this draconian specter of command influence to push this particular virulent biblical worldview of the gospel of Jesus Christ on helpless subordinates. The first goal they have is they want to see, quote, a spiritually transformed U.S. military. Goal number 2, with ambassadors for Christ in uniform. Historically, that hasn't worked out too well for planet Earth the last 2,000 years. And then lastly, empowered by the Holy Spirit. And so it exists everywhere. This first started at my alma mater, the U.S. Air Force Academy. We found out about it 4 years ago when the Mel Gibson movie came out. I forget the name. I think we refer to it as the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre, or Freddy versus Jesus. Obviously, I'm referring to the Passion of the Christ. And I had 3 kids at the Academy at that time. I'm also a graduate myself. I was stunned to find out how much pressure was being brought to bear on the 4,400 cadets at the Air Force Academy and the 6,000 staff to go see that film. That's how it started, and it's 4 years later, and I'm telling you, we've just about lost the U.S. military. And our military, unlike Al Qaeda and the Taliban, we actually do have WMD.
So you became aware of it 4 years ago based on your work and research. Since that time, when did this actually start within the military?
Well, I get asked that question a lot. We think that if we take a careful analysis, the real rock in the middle of the stream here, where things changed, was 1972 at the end of the draft, the end of mandatory conscription. Because when we had a draft, at least in theory, we were pulling uniformly from around the country for people to go into the military from what we now refer to as blue and red states. with the end of the draft, even though we still have a poverty draft in this country, but with the end of the draft, there was a huge market and significant, substantial, non-trivial demographic shift to mostly just red states, where they were mixing this incredible supercharged patriotism with this weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ. It continued to grow and grow and grow. During the 8 years of the Clinton presidency, there was great estrangement between the West Wing and the Pentagon. So the Pentagon looked internally, and it continued to grow. By 1994, at the end of the second year of the Clinton presidency, we see the Newt Gingrich revolution, the real politics of polarizations that rears its ugly head, and we start getting this digitized view of the world from the Republicans. And I am a registered Republican. I come from a conservative military family. I know that the people I'm fighting, the fundamentalist Christians, would love it if I was essentially a Northern California tree-hugging, Chardonnay-sipping, Sierra Club member, bleeding heart Democrat. Not that there'd be anything wrong with that, to wax Seinfeldian, but I'm a Republican. I'm one who voted for Clinton twice, and I probably would I'd vote for a diseased cactus right now over any Republican. And not that the Democrats are so great either. It seems as though under Republicans, Mike, that man exploits man. But under Democrats, it's just the opposite. So we've given up on both political parties, and this is why we went into court 5 months ago today, September 17th last year, which was Constitution Day. We went in and filed a massive federal lawsuit. Again, we being the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. For the listeners, again, the URL, the website, please go to it, is www.militaryreligiousfreedom.org. And in federal district court in Kansas City, Mike, we're going to show our theme of the case is what we call the 4 Ps, a pernicious and pervasive pattern and practice of unconstitutional rape of the religious rights and the religious liberties of our U.S. military members. And we now have over 7,000 clients, and the astonishing thing is that 96% of them coming to us, not as complainants now, Mike, but as spiritual rape victim tormentees from this fundamentalist Christian predation in the military, up and down the chain of command. 96% of them coming to us are Christians themselves. Roughly 3/4 are traditional Protestants, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Methodists, Presbyterians. We'll get Assemblies of God, Church of Christ, Mormons. 1/4 of that 96% are generally Roman Catholic. 4%, and only 4%, are going to be Jewish, Islamic, Buddhist, Hindu, Native American, Wiccan, atheist, or agnostic. That this is basically fundamentalist Christians that are preying, Mike, P-R-A-Y and P-R-E-Y, on non-fundamentalist Christians, telling them, you know what, you may have thought that you're Christian enough for us, but you're not, and unless you change, you're going to be burning eternally in the fires of hell, along with the Muslims and the Jews.
So is this effort, do you believe it's coming from top down, or outside forces pushing in on the military, or what?
The answer is yes. It's coming directly from, how do I say this? I know we're live radio. From the extremely suboptimal human being in the West Wing right now, from that person, who will be gone soon, hopefully, and certainly from massive parachurch organizations. The Air Force Academy is a good example because it's located, of course, in Colorado Springs, which is generally referred to as the Protestant Vatican. Over 100 of this nation's largest evangelical organizations are centered there. Some of them are well known. The Navigators focus on the fascists. Oh, did I say that? I meant focus on the family. New Life Church, Cowboys for Christ. It's amazing how many organizations that are headquartered there. But we've basically, this is something that I know that is hard for people to understand or believe. But if you take a look at the people on our board, in our advisory board, we have generals and admirals, we have Nobel Peace Prize winners, we have human rights activists, we have devout Catholics and Protestants, we have clergy. Ambassador Joe Wilson, the husband of Valerie Plame, and they're both very close friends. Joe's on my advisory board. We're adding next week. We're adding another Air Force general. So it's just literally astonishing. And how astonishing is it? I tell people, okay, where were you? Were you on Tuesday, July 12th, 2005? When on the front page of the newspaper that is most reviled by the Pentagon, and that newspaper, Mike, would be the New York Times. So this had to be vetted. The number 2 ranking general in the U.S. Air Force Chaplains Corps, Brigadier General Cecil R. Richardson, thousands in the Chaplains Corps, but he makes the astonishing statement to the American people on the front page of a newspaper the Pentagon hates, that it's now the U.S. Air Force's official policy to, quote, reserve its right to evangelize anyone it determines to be unchurched. Now, for the listeners here, your mind should boggle at the at the juxtaposition of those nouns and verbs and their operational definitions. We reserve the right in the U.S. Air Force to evangelize anyone we determine to be unchurched. Now, constitutionally, you have to be able to put in there, okay, well, we reserve the right to Islamicize anyone we determine to be unmosqued, or Judaize anyone we determine to be unsynagogued, or atheize. You get the picture. We looked at this and gave the Air Force 88 days to say, take it back. You can't do that. It's not just the First Amendment, where there is a separate, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, 16 golden words, which creates this separation of church and state, which the people that we're fighting, which is not Christianity or even evangelical Christianity, but a small subset of evangelical Christianity with a very long technical name, I'll just say it once, premillennial, dispensational, bear with me, Reconstructionist, Dominionist, evangelical, fundamentalist Christianity, about 12.6% of the American public, or about 38 million people. But remember, Hitler only had 8% in his party, and Stalin had 2.9% in his. This is something where these people believe that they have an illimitable right to push their biblical worldview completely irrespective of the Constitution. And they, of course, believe that the separation of church and state is a myth, like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. In fact, in George Bush's state, Texas, the GOP, God's own party, the Republican Party, since 1999 has had a plank in their official platform to, quote, dispel the myth of the separation of church and state. Now, that's in the First Amendment, which went into effect in March of 1791. 15 months earlier, the body of the Constitution, Mike, went into effect, and that includes Clause 3, Article 6, wherein which our founding framers were so assiduously careful to separate religion out of government, they said it. We will never have a religion test for any position in the federal government. Unless, of course, I guess you're the United States military, where the Air Force will hold a religion Geiger counter up to anyone. And if it comes back with this amorphous phrase, okay, the test came back and you're pregnant. Oh, no, you're unchurched. Well, we reserve the right to evangelize you. And let me assure you, if you're in the United States military, and in my family, my youngest son just graduated from the Air Force Academy last May in the class of 2007. He's the 6th member of my family to go there. My Christian daughter-in-law went there. My 2 Jewish sons went there. I went there. My brother went there. My brother-in-law went there. My father's a distinguished graduate from Annapolis. If you're being even gently evangelized by your military superior up and down the chain of command, get the hell out of my face, sir or ma'am, is not an option for you. So they come to us and we do it.
So 12.6% within the overall population of the U.S., you have a sense for within the military what percentages we're looking at?
Yeah, it looks like it's about triple in the military. And like I said, it doesn't need to be much more than that, but it's astonishing because it's the opposite side of the same coin. We are fighting, and rightfully fighting, Wahhabist Islamic fundamentalists that are attempting to impose their version of Sharia law on the rest of us. And we defeated fascists like Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo in World War II in 44 months. Next month will be our 60th month in the AOR, the Area of Responsibility, which is how the Pentagon refers to Iraq and Afghanistan. Must we become the Christian Taliban and the Christian Al-Qaeda to defeat these? There's a famous statement by Sinclair Lewis, who was the first American to win the Nobel Prize in Literature, and won it in 1935 for a book that was entitled "It Can't Happen Here." He was talking about fascism, as fascism was enveloping the globe. His book said, "Well, it can't happen here." And he went over to Nazi Germany in 1939 and stayed for a while just to observe things. When he came back to America, I think it was in New York. He held a press conference, and again, this guy is he's wildly celebrated like a rock star. Everyone asked Mr. Sinclair, "What did you see over there?" He said, "Nope. Finally, America finally had a Nobel laureate in literature." And he said, "Let me tell you what I saw. I saw fascism. Not if, but when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the American flag, carrying a cross." 13 years later, General Douglas MacArthur, a somewhat known soldier in this country's history, made the statement at the height of the Cold War that the American fighting man loves symbology, and his 2 favorite symbols are the flag and the cross. And it continued on and continued on, and with the Cold War, with the concept of the godless communists, clearly this weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ it's tough to get into the mind of these people, but there's a way to do it. They will take certain select phrases from their interpretation of the New Testament, and they create this terrible cleaving instrument, cleaving the American military into the children of the lesser God or no God at all, and the children of the greater God. They'll look at John 14:6, and where Jesus says, "I'm the only way, truth, and light, and no one comes to the Father but through me." In other words, we're the only way. They look at Matthew 12:30, where their interpretation, Jesus says, "Those who are not with me are against me." Well, if you say, "Well, how much, sir, do I have to be with you?" Or, "How much, ma'am?" Well, thank you for asking. That's Matthew 10:37, where it says that if you love your mother and father or children, sons and daughters more than me, you're not worthy of me. Well, what are we here for? That's Matthew 10:34, where Jesus says, "Don't make the mistake of thinking that I came here to bring peace, because I didn't come here to bring peace. I came here to bring the sword." And they say, well, what do we get if we follow you? They say, here's what you get. It's John 3:36, as many other quotes. "Those who follow me get eternal life, and those who don't, will burn eternally in hell." And then ultimately they'll turn your attention to Luke 19:27, in a part of the New Testament called the parable of the pounds, where in the mind of dominionist Christians, Jesus says, "Go out to his disciples and apostles, go out among the people and bring back before me, Jesus, all of those who will not accept me, Jesus, as their king over them, and slaughter them." Now, it's literally, this is the mind, this is their mindset. These people are unbelievably, vehemently homophobic. They are vehemently misogynistic. They believe that basically women should be consigned to selecting food, preparing food, cleaning up after meals, spreading their legs, getting pregnant, and raising children. They are vehemently anti-Islamic and anti-Semitic. And lastly, they have this incredible belief that their pristine, weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ, "Accept us or we're going to kill you, and then you'll die here, and then Jesus will take care of you forever because you'll be lit up like a Roman candle on the 4th of July in hell," they subordinate flawed man's law, which is the U.S. Constitution, Mike, to this pristine version of the gospel. Look, at this radio station here, if your boss came in, or if your shift manager at Starbucks, KFC, Pizza Hut, McDonald's, it violates Title VII of the U.S. Code if an employer pushes their religious faith on an employee. You can't do it. But in the U.S. military, that's not just your employer, that's your military superior. In the U.S. military, having sexual intercourse with someone other than your spouse is a felony. I've tried and defended those cases. Adultery is a felony. Why? Because many constitutional rights in the U.S. military for our members are necessarily truncated and limited to preserve the higher goal of establishing a formidable magnitude of good order and discipline, which creates the necessary lethality for our military to protect the full panoply of constitutional rights for the rest of us. Consequently, in the U.S. military, if you're ordered to go to the base dentist at 4 p.m. and you don't go, it's a felony. The Pentagon recognizes this, Mike. We have regulations up and down the chain of command that prevent military superiors from pushing Tupperware, Mary Kay Cosmetics, and Amway on subordinates. And yet, we're going to make the statement that in the U.S. Air Force, we reserve the right to, if you don't wear shirt and shoes, we're not going to serve you in this restaurant. And if we think you're unchurched, whatever that means, apparently it means it's mostly other Christians, we're going to reserve the right to evangelize you. And remember, many of your constitutional rights are limited. So that's what we're faced with. We're talking about this morning here, a national security threat internally, every bit as much in magnitude as what's now challenging us externally by a resurgent Taliban and an Al-Qaeda that our second most recent national intelligence estimate tells us is at least as strong as it was on 9/11.
So in addition to people like the second highest ranking chaplain, have you identified specific people in the upper reaches of the military that you can point to and give us examples of the problems there?
Well, here's the great news. That second-ranking chaplain was just promoted to his second star by Bush, and he'll be taking over the chaplain's corps on June 8th. We cannot wait to take his deposition. We have caught 3- and 4-star generals and admirals who've ordered their command staffs, and they command 70 and 80,000 troops. I mean, that's a very large amount. They've ordered their staffs to put together PowerPoint presentations showing the direct parallel between the Book of Revelation and all of our movements into Crete, Mosul, Basra, Anbar Province, Sadr City in the northwest part of Baghdad, Tora Bora, and all over Afghanistan. Now, you have to understand something. The Book of Revelation is somebody's interpretation based on the politics of the time. And I'm not going to get into the mind. I don't care what somebody's religious views are. Half of my own family, I'm Jewish, but half of my own family is Christian. And in that half, we have evangelical Christians whose last name is Christian. We all love each other and get along fine. It's different when you have your religious view, engage the machinery of the state with its awesome power, prestige, and financial heft, and not HUD or OMB or the Department of Education or the Department of the Interior. We're talking about the place where all the sticks and stones are that break our bones, where the conventional, laser-guided, and nuclear weapons are. I'll give you an example. Malmstrom Air Force Base along the northern tier of this country, because back during the Cold War, the fastest way to shoot a nuke into the Soviet Union was right over the North Pole. So I mean, it still is. And at that base, where we have a lot of nuclear launch crews sitting in silos with nukes, they recently added a new store to the base exchange. I'm not sure if you know if your listeners know what a BX or PX is, but on every military installation, this is the commercial center. There's a bowling alley. There's a commissary. There's a laundry, a dry cleaners. There's a military uniforms shop. There's like the military version of Costco. It's all owned by the military. At Malmstrom Air Force Base 3 months ago, and of course we have pictures, they've decided to open up a new chain of stores. Now, I hope everyone's got their Seattle seatbelts on today. This new chain of stores is called Enabled by Christ, a store for the Christian man. Now, forget the sexist aspect alone. Imagine if it said, enabled by Allah, a store for the Islamic man. Enabled by Satan, a store for... That's what you have to do, because in this country, because of our Constitution, and specifically because of our Bill of Rights, which was not created for the convenience of the majority. In fact, on the contrary, it was created to prevent the tyranny of the majority from harassing and hurting the minority. That's what it was there for. In this country, all religions are allowed, but none are to be favored. And it doesn't matter. I mean, I've had people say, well, Mikey, the military is 90% Christian. Actually, it's 87, 88% Christian, so it's going to look real Christian. No, that's not the way it is in this country. It can be that way in Kim Jong-il's North Korea, or with the family Saud in Saudi Arabia. In this country, as Sandra Day O'Connor said, and boy do we miss her, we don't count heads before enforcing the First Amendment. That's what it is. Now, because of this fight, and again, for anyone who's listening, please, I know it's early in the morning, get on your computer and go to militaryreligiousfreedom.org. We're a nonprofit charity. The dark side that we are fighting is insanely well financed, and we need the help. We need your help. It's useless to call your congressional representatives or to send emails or letters or smoke signals or carrier pigeons. Those are weed whackers, which knock these people back 2, 3, or 4 days. We are litigating. It's expensive, but our job is to lay down a withering field of fire, kick ass, take names, and leave sucking chest wounds on this unconstitutional heart of darkness. We need your help. Listen to this show today and help us. militaryreligiousfreedom.org.
Do you believe this has been a gradual, steady takeover, or do you believe it's increased recently?
Well, as we discussed earlier in the show, after the so-called Gingrich Revolution, it really had a huge spurt. The concept of, being that either you're with us or against us. It's all biblically based. But then after 9/11, with this person in the West Wing of the White House, it just went on steroids. You ask a good question. In 1970 in our country, Mike, we only had 10 mega evangelical churches in the entire country, with a mega evangelical church being operationally defined as 2,000 or more members. But after 9/11, with Bush in the White House, a new mega evangelical church is opened up in America every 48 hours. Now, you're lucky living in Seattle. You live in a blue city, and some of you live in a blue, I guess I would say kind of isolated city. You don't know how it is in the rest of America. You're in a bubble. Be happy that you are, but be aware that you have other American citizens that are suffering. Many of them wear the uniform of our country, and we're involved in a war right now. The stories from the war zone are unbelievable. There's a lot of downtime in the combat zone. One of the favorite things the troops like to do is to go to their unit DVD library and check out movies. But the commanders are censoring movies now, leaving only those with, quote, strong Christian content. They have trouble, or they can't even get Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or anything else someone thinks is not appropriately Christian. Battalions and companies and squads are being forced to engage in fundamentalist Christian prayers before combat missions, with the commanders telling everyone that those people that will not accept the fundamentalist perspective of Jesus Christ means that the unit will not get the blessing of Jesus Christ. And if there are grievous injuries or fatalities, it's because of those guys over there who will not accept Christ. The ones that don't accept the appropriate biblical worldview are being given the assignments going into parts of the AOR, the area of responsibility, be it parts of Baghdad, or it could be any other part of where the combat is going on, where there's a known higher likelihood of confronting jihadi and insurrectionists or facing IEDs. We found the 523rd Attack F-16 Squadron, called the Crusaders, in the U.S. Air Force. Its official symbol on its attack F-16s, equipped to carry, again, nuclear, conventional, laser-guided weapons. On their flight suits, in their squadron, a gigantic crucifix and then a gigantic helmet from the year 1096, the year of the First Crusade. The helmet is surrounded by 3 yellow stars in the shape of a crucifix to represent the Trinity, and then there's a giant crusader's broadsword. Now, what do you think that does? Is there anything more we could do to make it easier for already pissed off and angry young Islamic men and women in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria to want to come and join and bolster the cause of the people against us? Can we do anything more to make it easier for them to want to do this? I know that in this state, apparently there's a rivalry between 2 colleges called the University of Washington and Washington State. You tell me what would happen if 3 days before that football game, whether it was here or in Pullman, the head coach of the University of Washington called the mothers of the Washington State football players whores. You think that might motivate them a little more down there in Washington State to want to beat the hell out of the University of Washington football players? So remember, the Crusades ended about last Tuesday. Actually, they never ended in the Middle East. In the Deep South, the War of Northern Aggression, the Civil War, never ended. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. This is something that is killing our young men and women while they're trying to carry forward this fundamentalist perspective of converting the world. Military ministries of the Campus Crusade for Christ, their motto is capturing the countries of the world through the military of the world. They go to the entry points: Great Lakes Naval Station for the U.S. Navy, Lackland Air Force Base for the Air Force, Camp Lejeune and Camp Pendleton for the Marine Corps, Fort Jackson, Fort Leonard Wood, for many places for the U.S. Army. And specifically, they say it's on the web. We're going to get them when they're vulnerable. They're like little ducklings when they come out, and they want to biologically imprint whoever's there. So we got to be there with Jesus. And when you have the power of a drill instructor or a senior military person on a junior enlisted person or officer, it's next to impossible to stand up and speak truth to power. We're living in a country where the average American is too terrified to tell someone to shut up if they're talking in a theater doing a movie. But we know that. That's the way it is. That's why we exist, because we do tell people to shut up, and we do, go into court. And it's the Military Religious Freedom Foundation at militaryreligiousfreedom.org.
And very briefly, so where are your lawsuits currently?
In Kansas City, Kansas, Federal District Court, and it's likely we'll be opening up new lawsuits in the state of Washington, the state of California, the state of Colorado, state of Ohio, state of Texas, state of Florida, state of New York.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
We have just been talking with Mikey Weinstein. He is the founder and president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation and author of the book With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. And again, you can find out more about his organization from their website, militaryreligiousfreedom.org.